questions. Hola, hola, hola. Hi, everyone. I am Nori. This is JP.
Was that your sexy voice?
Yes.
This is JP.
It's JP, and you are live with Books of Bay. You wasn't with it? You're not here for my sexy voice?
I just want to know. People got to know.
Who got questions? Who want to know? Who want to know? All right, so we are currently reading The Power of Now with Eckhart Tolle, from Eckhart Tolle, and we are on chapter 6 called The Inner Body. All right, so that's it.
Get a little closer.
Yeah, I know JP likes to be all up in there.
You like to be far back. You don't want people to see your pretty face?
Thanks, babe. All right, this is really, really close, but okay. Okay, so then.
All right, where are we at today? Chapter 6.
Chapter 6, y'all. We're cruising through this chapter. And also, stick around with us because we are going to tell you what's our next reading.
Yeah.
We're going to be dropping the next book with you guys, so you can join us. All right, babe. Tell us.
Are you getting comments again? You know how y'all should be acting up. You gotta say hi.
Wow. People are like calling me out right now, bro. It's crazy. It's gonna go and put hi here. Ain't nobody
say nothing.
Nobody say nothing.
All right. Hey.
Okay. Did y'all miss us yesterday? We took yesterday off. You know, Saturday's our day off. So we decided not to do a video because we were resting.
It was really resting.
We really were resting.
I didn't even go hoop yesterday because I was dead. I was still dead from my workout on Thursday.
Yeah, I wanted to go to boxing. I played myself. I didn't go. She played herself. Okay, so.
What are we talking about in chapter 6?
Chapter 6, the inner body.
The inner body. Your body. My body.
So this chapter, there's a lot of talk about religion. And in the previous chapter we read, we started talking more about the Bible and the teachings of Jesus. So in this particular chapter, there's some real challenges around that and some things that came up in this chapter. So we're really excited to kind of get into this chapter because there was so much to cover. So we're just gonna get to it. All right.
And I would say, so my word for this chapter was fear.
JP always got a word now.
I did. What's your word?
My word was feel.
Feel. All right.
Feel.
But I really do like the feel because he does talk about it, and we're getting to that. But he actually, one of the previous chapters, he talks about strategies, but he kind of leaves the whole chapter of the inner body for one strategy as well, as we'll discover as we go. You want to kick us off there?
Let's see if we get the same thing highlighted.
All right, let's do it.
Per usual. So those of you that are following up with us with The Power Now, we are on page 107. And the first thing that I highlighted in this chapter was a question. The question is, I am still not quite sure I fully understand what you mean by being. So in previous chapters, Eckhart says that you're a being, not just a body, but you are a being, so that you're a source of light or you have a source of energy, and that's really what you are. And he calls that a being. Don't get caught up on that because he's really big on like these are just words to try to communicate with the mind, but it is not necessarily for you to be like, oh, it's this or it's nothing. So do not get hung up on that at all. And someone asked him, I'm still not quite sure if I fully understand what you mean by being. To which he replies, water? What do you mean by that? I don't understand it. That is what a fish will say if he had a human mind. And this really stuck with me because the human mind is designed to try to understand,
solve problems,
and labels and conceptualize things. And when the mind can't do that, it has a really tough time understanding things, or letting them be, or surrendering to them, or accepting them as they are, because he really wants to be able to put a label on it and kind of like make sense of it. And the only way the mind can make sense of things is by the things that like it's in relation to what it already has in the mind.
Comparing it to something else.
You have to compare it. Like you know what day is because you know what night is. You know what late is because you know what early is. Like there has to be a point of comparison. And when the mind doesn't have that point of comparison, it struggles a lot. And as a result, it'd be like, it doesn't make sense, can't compute. I'm not done with it. So Eckhart says, please stop trying to understand being. You will have already had significant glimpses of being. But the mind will always try to squeeze it into a little box and then put a label on it. It cannot be done. It cannot become an object of knowledge. In being, subject and object merge into one, even if the mind wants to label that thing. So, which I wrote that in the side. But then he says, being can be felt as the ever-present I am that is beyond name and form. So I think for me in this particular book, it has been really eye-opening to understand that there's form. So there are things that we have to understand that's like the body, right? That's the physical body, that's a form. Mm-hmm. Animals have also a form. Plants are also another form. This desk in which this computer is sitting is whatever on right now is another form. So this couch is another form. So there are all these different types of forms, but the form is not the thing. You know, the form is not like this couch is just not a couch. Right. It's made out of materials. It's made out of all this. It has labor that has been put into it. There's love that's been put into it. There's all these things that have been put into this particular thing that it's more than just what you see. And what Eckhart says is that a lot of us get caught up on the thing itself, on the form of the thing itself, right, instead of looking at it from all the things that it could be, all the source, the energy that it is. We think it's all these other things that we see or that we can touch. We limit our imagination to our senses in a way. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, if we can't imagine it, we don't think it's which makes sense because the human mind. We were actually just talking about this a little bit. We limit ourselves by what we think is possible. Mm-hmm. So we put labels on things, particularly like on what God can do, because for us it may be unfathomable how big the universe actually is. At the same time, it may be unfathomable for us to know that the universe is finite, because for us right now, it looks huge. And, either of those is really hard to imagine just for the fact that we tend to label things as finite and indefinite.
Absolutely. And then we get into this conversation around freedom, right? So Eckhart starts talking about how we want to be free. And even Jesus says that the truth will set you free. What is that truth that it's talking about? And then what are we going to be set free from what? And to which he says, free from the illusion that you are nothing more than your physical body and your mind. A lot of us think that who we are is the body, who we are is the mind. And by the mind, I'm referring to the thoughts that you have in your mind. Like who you are those thoughts. Who you are is where you came from. Who you are is what family you were born into. Who you are is what college you went to. Who you are is, if you are black, if you're white, if you're a woman, if you're a man, if you have brown eyes, if you have long hair, short hair. A lot of us limit our definition of who we are to that. To the thing that we see, again, right, the thing that we feel, what we see and what we can touch, we engaging with our senses, we think that's really what we are. Right. But there's a lot more to who we are. And I find it interesting because he says, free from fear in its countless disguises as the inevitable consequences of that illusion. Mm. So if you think that you are your body, hello, Jojo. If you think that you are your body, if you think that you are your mind, you're going to behave accordingly. Right. And you're going to believe the thoughts that are in your mind without questioning them, without challenging them, without asking your thoughts to defend themselves to you. You're going to believe them blindly. And then you're going to act in accordance to those beliefs. So if you believe that you're not capable of running a marathon, you're never going to run a marathon because you're like, oh, I can't even do that. Like, I don't know how you do that. Like, I've ran 2 marathons and people are always like, I have no idea how you do that. I can never run a marathon. I cannot even run outside for like 5 minutes, let alone fathom the idea of running 26.2 whatever miles. But again, it's what you believe that you can do and then you limit yourself. I didn't go in it thinking, oh, I can run a marathon. I went in it thinking, I can run. Mm-hmm. We'll see how long I can run. We'll see how long we can go, and not putting that pressure on myself about it. I think a lot of us put that pressure on ourselves and then keep ourselves from taking action.
I also see you have highlighted in that same paragraph, and free from sin, which is the suffering you unconsciously inflict on yourself and others as long as this illusory sense of self governs what you think, says, and do. So these illusions that we have, those are the real sin because we're projecting our illusions onto the earth and onto other people. So I'm projecting that Bae is getting on my nerves because she's doing something that I don't like. But in reality, that's just pain that I'm inflicting on myself, because in reality, I'm actually free from that. I'm free to be, who I want to be, and not let that impact who I am. And it's because I'm not looking beyond the words.
And what I find it interesting is when he talks about like suffering, like the idea that you make yourself suffer because you do not want to accept what is, and you want to fight it. Again, the R word shows up, right? So we call it not the R word. That's another manifestation of how that comes to life and how it manifests. So that was really interesting. Now, what really stood out to me, although I didn't highlight it, but it really did, was the comment that the person responds to that. So once he says, the sin that Jesus talked about is the suffering you put yourself through on your own, and the suffering you put others through because you do not understand what they're because you're not available to them. You don't create space for them. When the person responds and says, I don't like the word sin, it implies that I'm being judged and found guilty. So I think a lot of us have relationship with these words. And when we hear words or when we see words, we attach our feelings to those words, a story to those words, our narrative to those words, and what those words mean to us. And I'm glad that he shared that, because I think a lot of people get caught up with the word instead of trying to receive the lesson or the information. They're just like, well, I don't like this word, so I'm not going to listen to anything you have to say. Right. And I really like that he says, well, you don't have to use that word. If you don't like the word sin, don't use the word sin. Use any word that you would like to use.
But he doesn't. Then he goes on to say, though, to not get stuck. You have that? Yeah. You have that. Don't get stuck on the level of word. A word is no more than a means to an end. It's an abstraction. Not unlike a signpost. It points beyond itself.
Yeah. I like when he says the honey thing. Like the word honey isn't honey.
Like, you can talk about honey, we can have a conversation about honey, but until you actually touch, taste, and feel honey, you don't know what honey is.
Yes.
So we're just using that as a reference, as a signpost to make it easier for us. But until you're actually in it, you don't know what these words actually mean. And this kind of reminds me of when I was also younger in church. Or just growing up, and people would say these bad words. Oh, don't say these bad words. And I used to say, well, where did these bad words come from? Who decided? Who got to decide that a word was bad? Like, my grandma's on here right now, and her favorite word is shit. Like, grandma would say shit all the time, and it's not. I mean, and then there would be levels of bad words, right? Shit versus motherfucker or whatever. Like, oh, you can say the lower cuss word, but don't say the higher word. So think of the same type of thing where we once again attach labels to these words just because, it's easier for us to understand. And because someone at some point was offended by that word, they decided that labeled that word bad or good. And people just decided to adopt that label.
I also like when he says, similarly, you can talk or think about God continuously for the rest of your life. But does that mean that you know or have even a glimpse the reality to which the word points? It really is no more than an obsessive attachment to a signpost or a mental idol. That term, mental idol, really it stood out to me, because I think even with my journey with religion and relationship with God, I think at some point it's just been this mental idol, this kind of like, oh yeah, I want to be like Christ, but in the day-to-day, I'm not really embodying those things, because it's like, well, he's still so far out there that I can get away with not really putting in the work to be Christ-like, because nobody really is putting in the work to be Christ-like in the first place.
I would figure, well, it sounds like to me, as long as you just repent before you die, you're good. You can just do whatever you want in life as long before you die. You just be like, I forgive me, Jesus, and you're good. Like, you're going to heaven.
Yeah, God be forgiven.
So if a word doesn't work for you anymore, then drop it and replace it with one that does work. If you don't like the word sin, then call it unconsciousness or insanity. That may get you closer to the truth, the reality behind the word, than a long used word like sin, and leaves little room for guilt. So if you want to call it sin, unconsciousness, insanity, it doesn't matter. We're all referencing the same thing. And it really depends on what you're more comfortable with using and whether that word or term serves you. If that word means something in your life and it helps you along the way, then continue to use it. But you don't have to be stuck to those definitions and used the words like everybody else does.
Okay. Next page, unless you want to go over something on that page. So next page 110, he says, so the person that he's talking to, right, they're having like this exchange. So Eckhart says this thing about the word, like you don't have to use that word if you don't want to, and then you can use insanity or you can use unconsciousness. And then this person is like, I don't like those words either. They imply that there is something wrong with me and I'm being judged. And then he goes on to say, yes, something is wrong with you because, you know, and that doesn't mean you're being judged. Something being wrong doesn't mean that somebody's judging you. It's just the fact, you know? So he says, it's not a question of guilt, but as long as you are run by the egoic mind, you are part of the collective insanity. So he's saying that we are part of the human race. Sure, humans. We are humans. If you're watching this, you're a human. Or if you're a robot, hey, robot. If you're watching this, you're a human, right? So as a human, you're part of that stuff that humans have done because you are a human. Like, human has killed a lot of people, have caused a lot of suffering, a lot of pain. And I'm not saying you personally have caused that suffering, but you are part of the collective. Human. You have the human energy. Therefore, you are part of the collective. Like, lions are part of whatever lion collective happens, you know? Animals are part of whatever the collective animal happens. That's just the facts. That's not like a debate or anything. At least we're not debating that with you. And then he says, above all, don't forget to observe your mind, your own mind. Seek out the root of the insanity there. And I really love it because Eckhart, he always brings it back to you. Like, yes, all these things are present, but ultimately you have to do your part. It starts with you. You have to go back to yourself and begin to see how you are playing a role and take actions with the role by monitoring your mind. And I think a lot of us do not like that because that means that we are responsible and we have to take action. And we don't want to do that because we think we have other things to do or things that are more important. And I love that he always comes back and says, observe your own mind and seek out the root of the insanity there. And through that process, it's really how we got here. Right. To seeking the root of our own insanity and our own obsession with making money and our own obsession with wanting to be rich and retire by a certain age and being a millionaire by a certain age, because to some people we're retired. So that really has pushed us to become more conscious and more aware of ourselves and how we look at the world. Did you have anything else there? Because I know
I got the same thing you got. So okay. We both agree on that one.
All right. So the next thing I have, then Eckhart gets into this conversation about the body and how some people, I think this is what it is. The body, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Then he talks about how the body can help you get in touch with your being, how the body can help you get in touch with your source of power. And a lot of people have a distorted view of the body. And I think he gets into it in here. I mean, he says, to inhabit the body is to feel the body from within, to feel life inside the body, and thereby come to know that you are beyond the outer form. So in order for you to understand that you are not your body, in order for you to understand that there's more to you beyond your body, beyond the form, this particular physical form that you have to be able to experience what's happening inside your body. Like, what's happening? How does your body feel within? Like, and some of you might be like, what's happening inside my body? What the fuck are you guys talking about? This has got too much. I'm out. Well, what he talks about is beginning to pay attention to what happens within you. How does your energy flow? What happens when you're stressed? Like, what kind of emotions are coming up? What kind of energy buildup is happening? And we all have had a part of this. This is the part that makes you cross the street if you see somebody shady on the other side of the street, or makes you go down a different path if you're like, you don't think that's safe. Our body is already helping us do some of that, but he says you got to be more conscious about it. And I have here, I'm speaking of it not to give you something to believe, but to show you how you can know it for yourself. Which I really love about Eckhart, because he's not trying to convince you to do nothing. Right. Eckhart is here like, this is what it is. If you don't believe me, go test it yourself.
Go do it.
Figure it out and come back and continue reading. Right. And I really, really love that.
You let me know if it don't work. Yeah. But I know it does.
Go ahead.
You are cut off from being as long as your mind makes up all your attention. The mind absorbs all your consciousness and transforms it into mind stuff. We all have mind stuff. That's the random chatter, the random things that we be thinking about that absolutely just come out of nowhere. You be sitting here and be like, why am I thinking about this random scenario? Why are all these other random thoughts in my head? Compulsive thinking has become, you cannot stop thinking. Compulsive thinking has become a collective disease. Your whole sense of who you are is derived from mind activity. Your identity, as it is no longer rooted in being, becomes a vulnerable and ever needy mental construct, which creates fear as a predominant underlying emotion. There's that word fear, as I said, is the word for me for this. And yeah, I definitely agree with that, particularly with fear being the predominant emotion that underlies pretty much everything. And if you think about it, a lot of the things that, even like with technology, any advances that we've made as humans, a lot of it has come from fear. You know, a computer, for example, is fear that I don't have time to do these things manually, so I'm going to use a computer to get more time back, which kind of gets to the end of, I don't have enough time, which is the fear of dying because we only have so much time here. So everything has to do with fear, but our minds continually feed us activity from that fear, and that's how it becomes a disease. Just we're constantly thinking about the fear, and it's not just the thinking; it's the fear that comes along with the thinking. Because when you start thinking about fear, it brings up stress, it brings up anxiety, and we all know that those things are, they lead to not only mental health but physical health issues as well.
I actually have the next thing highlighted too. The one thing that truly matters is then missing from your life awareness of your deeper self, your invisible and indestructible reality. I thought that was really powerful because a lot of people aren't aware of the deeper self, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later in this chapter, but it's this idea that you don't know what's really happening within you. You don't really know like how you really feel about things. You know how you think you're supposed to feel. You know how people would like you to feel. But when it comes to how you really feel about those things, you're not clear because you're clouded by all the things that you think need to happen and the things you're being taught. And you can't make the distinction between what's real and what's not. So then he says, to become conscious of being, you need to reclaim your consciousness, of the mind. This is really powerful because the mind be taking so much energy. The mind takes so much of your attention. And the more attention your mind is taking from you with things that are not even true, the less attention you put towards the things that are real, the things that are true. And as a result of that, that was intense. You can stay stagnant in your own spiritual journey. What else do you have for us on that page, baby?
A very effective way of doing this, which is being conscious or to become conscious of being, is to simply take the focus of your attention away from thinking and direct it into the body, where being can be felt in the first instance as the invisible energy field that gives life to what you perceive as the physical body. And since I've read this morning, read this again this morning because we've read this previously, and this is a totally new book, I've been using that. So this is the other strategy I was talking about, and that's just like sitting here and like feeling the physical energy run through your body. And I've always been aware of like whenever I feel a strong emotion, like my body physically gets numb, and it's I can feel the numbness in my body, and it's everywhere. So today what I've been doing is, when we're having our conversations, is I typically focus on the senses, but today I've been focusing on feeling myself and feeling my energy kind of on a lower level to stay present. And yeah, it actually works really well.
That's awesome. I'm here for it. I think that part a lot. Okay, then he goes with talk about connecting with the inner body. So he says like you can try yourself, whatever. And he says, do not start to think about it. Feel it. My word for the day. Feel. The more attention you give it, the clearer and stronger the feeling will become. And that's really true. If you're really struggling to be present and you just focus on feeling your inner energy, feeling your inner body, feeling how it flows or how fast it's moving, or feeling the energy in your hands, feeling the energy in your feet, in your back, in your head, you will become more and more present. Like that naturally will happen. So it has been working for me. And he says, the feeling of your inner body is formless, limitless, and unfathomable. You can always go into it more deeply, which I understand why people struggle with this, because is the idea that the work never ends, right? Like I remember talking to you about this at a point and being like, I'm just not having fun anymore because the work just never ends. And it's kind of like, well, because the work never ends, you can take your time,
right?
And you can break. You can take a break when needed. You don't have to feel obsessed to go through it all at once. You can be more conscious about just taking a break, resting, and they keep going. And this applies to you if you have a business, if you're in a relationship, if you have kids, whatever it is that you're experiencing. If you want to avoid the burnout, you have to understand that the work will always be there. That's whether you work for someone when 3 to 9 to 5, or whether you work for yourself. Like, it will always be there, and there's no reason to rush, because what are you rushing to? That's another question you want to ask yourself. All right, babe, seems like you have some more stuff for me.
Well, I'm moving over to the transformation through the body, and starts out with the question at the beginning: why have most religions condemned or denied the body? It seems that spiritual seekers have always regarded the body as a hindrance, or even as sinful. And we had a quick conversation about this, and we find that yes, most religions are trying to restrict sexuality, restricting the actions you can take. Yep. A lot of these restrictions is all based on through the body. Fasting is another one. And he says on the body level, or on the level of the body, humans are very close to animals. All of the basic bodily functions, pleasure, pain, breathing, eating, drinking, defecating, sleeping, the drive to find a mate and procreate, and of course, birth and death, we share with animals. So a lot of times we try to separate ourselves from everything else and saying, oh, we're different. God made us different for a reason, so we shouldn't give into those things. When it's like, no, we actually have more in common with those beings than we do have that's not in common. So then he goes on to say, Adam and Eve saw that they were naked and they became afraid. Unconscious denial of their animal nature set in very quickly. The threat that they might be taken over by powerful instinctual drives and revert back to complete unconsciousness was indeed a very real one.
He also says, don't fool yourself. You are no more than an animal.
Right.
And that was really, which makes sense, because animals is the rule of the jungle. Like, it is what it is. They understand.
Like, humans haven't been here as long compared to animals, right?
They've been here way longer. Compared to roaches, we've been here way longer. Just to bring it back to reality. We've been here way longer. And what really resonated with me about the body is, and I was telling you this earlier, babe, like the idea of how, I think the movie is called The Da Vinci Code, but definitely also in The Passion of the Christ, there's a scene where there's self-mutilation, where like somebody actually hit himself with like this things in his back to punish his body for his sins. And that stuff is pretty predominant in religion. And then when I also think about
Black households,
ways that people restrict the body, like for growing up, I grew up by the beach in Arguan, in Honduras, and we still have to put on shorts to go to the beach. Like you had a bathing suit, but you will put on your bathing suit, and then over your bathing suit you have to put on a shirt, and then you have to put on shorts. So I don't really know what the point of the bathing suit was, because
so you had to put it on like at the beach, like when you're in the water?
No, yeah. You left the house with your shorts, your bathing suit, your shorts, and your shirt. And then when you got to the beach, you got in the water with everything on. You did not take it off.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I never told you this?
Yeah.
Oh, clearly you don't read my captions on Instagram.
I'm not on Instagram.
But yeah, that was part of the process, and you can still see it. Like if you go back home with me and you go to the beach, you'll see people that are wearing full-on shirts and all of that. That's a cultural thing about not wanting to expose your body, because you never know, and you don't want to.
You never know.
You never know that there might be somebody there trying to over-sexualize you or trying to get physical with you in any shape or form. It's a quote-unquote form of protection, but it just makes you really subconscious about the body. And I also think about earlier, when you sit down and eat, and people be like, oh, you can't get up until you're done eating all your food, even if you're full.
Dumb stuff.
Again, rejecting the body, rejecting what the body's telling you to do, and that is done with that food. Going against resisting what is.
What you're saying makes sense, because I've seen people who may not like their body image want to keep on their shirt at the pool. So you go swimming, you're like, oh, you don't need a shirt to go swimming. It'll probably, if you're swimming, it'll probably hinder what you're trying to do. But because they're, self-conscious, that they're going to keep on the shirt the whole time. Same thing with like also in men's showers. I don't know about women's. I think in women's is separate, but like in men's showers, like it's all in the open. Like there are some curtains, but a lot of times there's no curtains. So some people would not want to expose themselves. So they would shower in their swim trunks or shower in the clothes they were swimming in, so they didn't get exposed and no one could see their body.
Especially when we have a vision of what a quote unquote healthy or good looking body looks. Not necessarily healthy, but a good looking body looks like. And if you feel like your body is not an attractive body, if you feel like your body's not a good looking body, then you're not going to want to show your body. You're not going to be open about your body because you're going to have your own feelings about it.
Right.
And I think that's that's a way that it definitely does way more harm than good, in my opinion, because then you are born then you're raised with this idea that you have to cover yourself to protect yourself and to make other people comfortable, instead of you choosing to cover yourself because you want to. You do it out of necessity in a way, because you feel like if you don't, you're going to be judged and treated differently. So it really made me very self-conscious about my body, because it was kind of like, well, the idea that even at the time, that's why I was struggling so much wearing the thong bathing suit in the Bahamas. Yes, because of those beliefs, because of that upbringing. Really, really interesting stuff. All right, what you have?
Go ahead.
You got more than I do. You got.
Let's skip all that.
All right. So he says that he talks about sexuality and how that being something that religions have tried to, deal with, put it down. And he says people began to disassociate from the body. They now saw themselves as having a body rather than just being. And that was an interesting concept for me, because people be like, oh, this is my body, I have my body, versus it's like a separate thing than who they are. And like, even how we treat our bodies, like if you are your body, maybe you'll be more mindful about what you eat, about how much you exercise, about what you drink, about what you don't drink, about how active you are. But because you think it's this separate thing that's not you, some of us don't care as much and don't give it the attention it deserves, because we see it as, oh, this is not really me. This is just this body that I got right now. Go ahead.
So moving on to when religion arose, this disassociation became even more pronounced as the "you are not your body" belief.
Okay, was that your thing?
That was it.
That one line?
That's it. That's all I got.
All right, great. He's so weird. Okay, and then he talks about countless people in the East and West throughout the ages have tried to find God, salvation, or enlightenment through denial of the body. This took the form of denial of sense, pleasures, and of sexuality, in particular, fasting and other aesthetic practices. In Christianity, they even inflict their pain on the body in an attempt to weaken or punish it because they regarded it as sinful. In Christianity, this used to be called mortification of the flesh. This is what I was talking about that happened in that movie. And this here, it's really interesting because religious people don't like sexuality. Like if they see somebody that's dressed in a way that they find to be provocative or sexy, which usually is me, because I'm always doing the most with the least, whatever I put on. And people are very like, that's not, you shouldn't dress like that. Even the idea of not wearing pants to church, of having to wear skirts.
My church had on the door, they had the Bible verse that supposedly told you that you had to wear a skirt as a woman, something about men or women don't do as men do, and vice versa, which is probably the same verse they use to justify not homosexuality or their stance against homosexuality.
And no one is immune to this, because as Eckhart says, even the Buddha is said to have practiced body denial through fasting and extreme forms of asceticism for 6 years, but he did not attain enlightenment until after he had given that practice up. Transformation is through the body, not away from it. And this is really, 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 really powerful, because I feel like we got it all fucked up. That's really what I gotta say.
What about it is fucked up, babe?
Well, the idea that we have to deny ourselves to achieve some level of something, to achieve some level of acceptance. And it's like, if you're already made in God's image, if God created all of us, if this higher power created all of us, whatever you want to call it, right? If that's true, then he already knows what we're capable of doing. He already knows what we already know what time it is. He already knows. People have said, before you were a thought in your parents' head, God had already designed your destiny, or whatever it is that people say. If that's true, then it's already, he already knows what it is. He already knows it's good.
Right.
So to me, it's like the idea that we have to reject our bodies to seek this salvation and to receive this salvation from God. It's really, it doesn't resonate with me. And it's one of the challenges I always have with religion is because God gives us the body for a reason. Hey, Michelle. Yes. We're on chapter 6, page 115. So I really resonated with that. And also, like, the body's part of who we are. So embracing all of who we are. You don't just get to pick what you're going to embrace from yourself. You embrace all of who you are. And then from there, you decide what you're going to keep and what you're going to change. And I think that's often lost.
And another thing that, you said that didn't resonate with you is that a lot of times I find that, so the same line, transformation is through the body, not away. You can't find out, about yourself by looking outward. You can only find out about yourself and your being by looking inward. Absolutely. And that was always a big struggle for me going to church, was all these things about God and Jesus. But it's like, people are following this person, but that doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't serve me. That doesn't help me understand the teachings. And as we know, most people in this world are obligers, and they just follow along with what everybody else is saying. So yes, it makes sense that you would tell people that to find their truth through somebody else, but in actuality, you can only find your truth through yourself.
Which is actually, I don't want to say that they've been saying it to find to somebody else, because I think they have a misunderstanding of what Jesus is and what God is. And it separates us from God. It separates us from Christ, and we are the same. We're made from the same thing. It's that essence. And the reason why Jesus was able to become Christ is because of his own awakening and his own surrendering to what was, and his own acceptance of the now. And I think that message gets lost in the church. Like, it's like, God is over here and you are over there. Don't you even think that you are on the same level of God in any shape or form. But that denies that you are made from that same essence. But at the same time, they're like, you're made in the image of God. So it's kind of like, you're doomed if you do and you're doomed if you don't at the same time. At the same time. All right, babe, what else you got for us?
I think you got something highlighted before I do.
No, it's cool.
All right. So although all spiritual teachings originate from the same source, once they become verbalized and written down, they are obviously no more than a collection of words. And a word is nothing but a signpost, as we talked about earlier. All such teachings are signposts pointing back to the original source. So here he's just saying again that we can't get caught up in, the words of that we've created as humans. We create lots of words, and we put them together and we attach these different meanings to all these words, but in the end, they all go back to the ultimate source, regardless of whatever religion you're practicing. Well, they're just signposts that point back to the ultimate source, which is all of us. We are the source, and the light that shines through all of us.
And a manifestation of what is free will, because I think that's a part that often gets ignored, that we have free will, and God or the source knows that this is a chance, like there's a chance that this may happen. And as we already talked about in the previous chapter, it's like, if you decide that you're not gonna wake up and be conscious, that's on you, because we are such a tiny speck in comparison to the universe that it doesn't matter if we don't have it together, because the universe is gonna be good and enlightened with or without us. There was something else I wanted to say. Yes, the word. So a lot of people look at the Bible and just focus on the literal interpretation of each word on the Bible. And I think what Eckhart invites us to do is to look beneath that surface, is to look to the root of some of this stuff and these teachings, and not just take it for the word that people are using or the word that people may say. And I think a lot of us, when we look at things like the Bible, for example, we just grab what gravitates to us and helps what's I'm looking for, validate what we believe, what is convenient to what we believe, and then miss out on the teachings through that process. I know my experience going to church, and I grew up in the church. Like, I grew up in a Catholic church in Honduras, and then when I was in the United States, I started going to a Baptist church. I never really been one that cares for denominations. I'm like, I'll go, I receive a word, and then I'll leave. But at the church I was attending in New York with Pastor Mike, FCBC, I really connected with that church because his message was really like genuine and caring. And he wasn't forcing us to believe that God was a jealous God or an angry God, but instead he was rooting it in God's love, because I don't believe that God is an angry and jealous God and at the same time a loving God. That does not, to me, make sense, because there's no way my mama can be jealous of me and love me at the same time. Like, that just doesn't sit with me. It's not a thing for me. So I think that really spoke to how a lot of us get caught up with the words. And just because you get caught up with the words doesn't mean that the words is the thing you need to be holding on to. Again, we get caught up with the mess. We get caught up with the details instead of really looking at what is the lesson here to learn. So that really spoke to me.
And then you go and talk about the sermon of the body. And just like we got some of the same stuff highlighted here.
Yeah, literally the same thing.
So do not turn your attention elsewhere in search for the truth, for it is nowhere else to be found but in your body. Do not fight against the body, for in doing so you are fighting against your own reality. You are your body. The body that you can see and touch is only a thin, illusory veil. Stop fighting it. Does that mean to stop fighting your sexual urges?
I believe so. I believe that we have created this monster when it comes to the body. Like, because we have not been open to accepting the body and the needs of the body, we have not created a space where people don't know how to behave with the body, because they never learned that. We never learned to have, like, some women don't come ever. Like, they've been taught not to touch themselves.
Exactly.
They've been taught that that should be reserved for the man, or that they makes them fast. Some women don't like to sleep on the first date because they are being told that only fast girls do that. Definitely sleep with him on the first date. Or you're gonna be called a hoe, and some women don't want to do that, right? So if you have been raised in an environment that makes you feel bad and guilty for wanting to explore your sexuality, then of course you're not gonna want to do those things, because then you also been told that men don't want to marry women that they sleep with on the first date, that they don't try to have fun with them.
Which on the same, like, some men go along with that. They really go, yeah, if I have sex with her, oh no, she's not a wifey type, or she can only have so many numbers or so many partners before I can't marry her. And that's, once again, that's the insanity of everything. What is it? Insanity, the sin,
the suffering, the suffering we put ourselves through.
Yes.
And I never understood the number thing, because I'm like, you mean to tell me because I slept with more people than you slept with that you can't be serious with me? First of all, that's stupid. And second of all, who says that you get to have a certain sexual experience that has to be more diverse than what I got? That doesn't make sense to me. And I think a lot of women feel like they can be truly who they are because of all these rules.
Yeah.
And then when they are not abiding by all these rules, people call them crazy. Or they'd be like, oh, she a hoe, or she fast, or she this. Don't be messing with this fast ass girls. I never understood women that call other girls fast. I
remember I was dating a woman, and she had maybe had a couple partners, maybe 2 or 3 at that point. And she had talked to one of her mentors, and her mentor put some words on her, and she did not like her. Her mentor was like, yeah, I've had like 25 partners. And she was just like aghast that this woman had the nerve to have sex with 25 people, men. Right? And her mentor was older. This was an older woman, probably 40s or 50s, right? And so this is time she was, early in college. But, that just goes to show that we've been programmed that, there's one thing that's right and there's one thing that's wrong. And in our society, for sure, it's A lot of women have that. I can't have that many partners. Well, the thing there was a phrase for every time if a woman tells you how many partners she has, add 10 or
something like that.
Something like that. And if a guy tells you, bring it down because he's lying. So it's on both sides.
Yeah, everybody's lying because people don't know how much honesty people can really take. So if I don't really know how much honesty I can have with you, people are, and I want to maintain our attention, then I'm gonna lie, right? And again, not fighting your animal instinct. We think we are this like magnificent, holy being, but in reality, we're animals and we behave like animals. We're like we give into an instinct. When you're hungry, have you ever been hungry and haven't had food?
Don't talk to me.
You're probably the worst.
Don't talk to me.
You're probably a terrible person if you've been hungry and you haven't had something.
I had to eat before this video because if not, I was like, man, I ain't gonna make it. Like they're going, like, what's wrong with JP today? Nigga was hungry. That was what was wrong with him today. He was hungry.
So let's keep going.
All right, want to get into the roots?
Have deep roots within. So the key is to be in a state of permanent and connectedness with your inner body and to feel it at all times. If you keep your attention in the body as much as possible, you'll be anchored in the now. This has really, really worked for me. The idea that you're sensing what's going on in your body. So some of you might be watching this and you're like, I have no idea what it's like to feel my body or to know what that is. And the reality is like, you do know what that is. You have been sick before and you felt your energy go from a high to a low. You have been excited before or been on like a roller coaster ride and you start and you feel the anxiety building up and then it comes down to a low. You have gone through that. So it's just really being more aware around what's happening with you. It's kind of like when you're watching a lake. If you stick to watching the lake from the far or as you're moving, you won't really see any movement in that lake. But if you get closer to the lake and then you stay still and you pay attention to what's happening under the water, then you start seeing that there's life there. There are fish. In our case, there are turtles, there are snakes, there are all these animals that are hanging out in the lake. And you wouldn't be able to see that if you were always moving, if you were always rushing. So I'm pretty sure that that's a lot of what Eckhart talks about here.
If you keep your attention in the body as much as possible, you will be anchored in the now. You won't lose yourself in the external world and you won't lose yourself in your mind. Thoughts and emotions, fears, there we go once again, fears and desires may still be there to some extent, but they won't take you over.
Absolutely.
And that's big because a lot of times we do let these emotions take over. And that's when you act out or when you say something, you say, oh, I didn't really mean to say that, or you make an action, oh, I didn't really mean to do that. Where that's because the emotion is the one that's in control and you're not present. So when those things do happen, you just have to be able to come back to the body, feel that emotion. It's okay to have that emotion. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to have that fear. But you have to feel that emotion, and then you can recognize that, hey, I'm not the emotion. The emotion is just part of my body.
Oh, it's just present in the body. It's not a part of it. It's present in the body in that moment. And I will even say, like, when it comes to feeling those emotions and allowing yourself to allowing them to be, it's also you realizing that you might not be able to control it. Like you may be at a point right now where you really can't stop thinking because you're so used to it. You're so engulfed by your thoughts and obsessed with your thoughts that it may be hard for you to take a break. And that is also the reality for some people. So if that's where you are right now, do not be discouraged. It just means that you're going to require to take some time to break from the thinking mind, and you're going to have to be intentional about that. I think we talked about this in chapter 1 or 2. You're going to have to stand like a warrior in a guard to your mind to make sure that whatever comes in, you are approving or disapproving. And once something sneaks in and that you didn't catch, you need to be able to be like, okay, this is sneaked in and I didn't catch it, but now I know that it's there.
I see you.
I'm bringing my attention into that, and then I can move it out, right? Because all you need to do is acknowledge it. As soon as you acknowledge it, it's done.
Don't indulge it, just acknowledge it.
Just acknowledge it. Do not give all your attention away to the mind in the external world. By all means, focus on what you are doing, but feel the inner body at the same time whenever possible. Stay rooted within. Yeah, a lot of us are not rooted. A lot of us also are rooted in things that are external. If you're always finding your value or your root in things that are external, you will always be searching for that.
If you're blaming all your problems on things that are external,
you're always gonna have problems. You're always gonna feel like, oh, my problems are never solved. Well, how can they? They rely on something that you can't control. They rely on other people. They rely on your circumstances. And a lot of us get caught up on that because we are not aware of the fact that it comes within. We have to go within. We have to turn inward. Today, I shared a post with my email list and my friends on Facebook too about what it means to be self-aware, and the idea that self-awareness is not just, hey bunny, the idea of self-awareness is not just to know what you like and what you don't like, but also self-awareness is to know how you feel about things, and to know generally how you feel, not how you think you need to feel, not how people want you to feel, but how you truly feel. And in order to do that, you have to remove all of the packaging and layers and layers of stuff that has been put within you, for not calling it shit, but really layers of things that you don't need. And then when you remove that, you can be like, oh, that's what's left. That's me. That's the stuff that you can take, that you, once you die, whatever you can take with you, that's really you. You can't take the money. You can't take the material stuff. You can't take the wife, the husband, the kids, unless you choose to. But other than that, like you can't. So that's really you. And what's you is you with the body, and you with this clearing your mind so that you can really feel, that's my word for the day, feel the things that you got going on. Come on, Pomsy, what you got next?
Unless you stay present, and inhabiting your body is always going to be essential aspect of it. You will continue to be run by your mind. So we just once again saying, got to make sure you stay present, because the mind will take you wherever the mind wants to go.
Absolutely.
And then I see you have something further down highlighted in that same paragraph. This is especially true when something goes wrong, or there is something lost or upset.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Yeah. So when something goes wrong, when you don't get the thing you wanted to get, that's a test for you, because suddenly you find yourself struggling.
We are reading The Power of Now
by Eckhart Tolle, and we are on chapter 6, page 118. When things go wrong, that's really the challenge, because that's the test. It's like you've been studying, and then boom, something goes wrong, and that's your opportunity to show how well can you pass the test. Like, how calm are you? How centered are you? How rooted are you? It is when things go wrong, when you get upset, that you really get to test your learning, and how present and rooted in the now you are. And then if you quote unquote don't pass the test, just even acknowledging that there was a test and that you didn't pass it, that in and of itself is you passing the test in a way, because you have received something from that. You have received a lesson. And a lot of us are living our lives missing out on daily lessons that we can receive, because we're refusing to acknowledge what's happening, and we're refusing to acknowledge the now. And he says, your conditioned reaction will then be involuntary, automatic, and predictable, fueled by the one basic emotion that underlines the mind-identified state of consciousness. Fear
strikes again.
We're all acting out of fear. We are all moving out of fear, and we are all letting fear guide our lives. And that's not just you and whoever else is watching this, but also us. There have been things we have done out of fear. You know, there have been decisions we made out of fear. There have been decisions we haven't made out of fear too. So fear doesn't only push you to do things, but fear also pushed you not to do things and not to engage in certain ways. So it's a really powerful emotion that unless you are able to wrap your mind around what fear is not, you're gonna really struggle a lot to let it go. And the connection with the ego that's like a whole nother.
Got a big ego.
That's a whole nother situation. Yes, please pick it up. We are on chapter 6.
You need your glasses. You keep leaning forward to see who it is.
Yeah, somewhere over there.
Is that right there?
I see it. My glasses are dirty, that's to be honest. But I see better now. My glasses are dirty. Okay, you have more for us on the next page?
All right, we're going to go to before you enter the body, forgive. I think we should go there.
All right, let's go there.
So once again, at the beginning of the paragraph, he has a question or a statement.
Okay.
I felt very uncomfortable when I tried to put my attention on the inner body. There was a feeling of agitation and some nausea. So I haven't been able to experience what you're talking about. And so he goes on to say, Unless you first give it some attention, the emotion will prevent you from gaining access to the inner body, which lies at a deeper level underneath it. Attention does not mean that you start thinking about it. It means to just observe the emotion, to feel it fully, and so to acknowledge and accept it as it is.
Some emotions are easy to identify: anger, fear, grief, and so on. Others may be much harder to label. They may just be vague feelings of unease, heaviness, or constriction halfway between an emotion and a physical sensation.
I don't know, but I feel some way about it. That's what I hear a lot. You gotta call at 6.
Oh, it's not. It's at 6. Okay, I gotta call at 6, guys.
Oh,
we got time.
Right. We got 12 minutes.
We still got time. We're gonna make it through our reading.
All right, we are.
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Oh shit.
We're gonna make it through spilling the water.
I didn't spill it. Okay, let's keep going. What matters is not whether you can attach a mental label to it. Remember this part. It's not important that you attach a mental label to whatever emotion you have, but whether you can bring the feeling of it into awareness as much as possible. So if you are feeling angry, feel the anger. Like really feel the anger and be interested in what's happening inside you as you are angry. And then you can experience what happens once you release the anger. I think a lot of us can never really experience the joy of life because we're so busy feeling, just being angry or being sad, or with grief particularly. That's an emotion I'm really familiar with. And you can only experience the joy of letting someone go once you've gone through the grieving process. If you are attached to the grieving process, if you're holding on to them, you won't let them go. And we don't just grieve people. We grieve relationships. We grieve situations.
Our identity.
We grieve parts of who we are. There's been parts of me I had to grieve because I was like, oh man, I'm different now.
Yeah.
And that feels weird. There are friendships I've had to grieve because I can no longer be a friend with this person, or I'm choosing to go in a different way. And that can be hard if you have identified who you are through those relationships.
Right.
So you have to give yourself room to grieve those relationships so that you can create space for who you want to be and how you want to be in your life.
Mm-hmm. And so in this chapter, he's talking about forgiveness. Non-forgiveness is often towards another person or yourself, but it may just be as well towards a situation or condition, past, present, or future, that your mind refuses to accept. Yes, there can be non-forgiveness even with regards to the future. The mind's refusal to accept uncertainty, to accept that the future is ultimately beyond its control. Ooh, the mind does not like that.
The mind is trying to.
The fact that I can't predict how much money I'm going to make in my business next month, my mind is like, what are we going to do?
Especially when everybody says you should be able to predict it. Right.
Predictable revenue.
Right. The mind does not let you be free. And the moment you truly forgive, you have reclaimed your power from the mind.
Hey, buddy, thank you.
Non-forgiveness is the very nature of the mind. Just as the mind made self the ego cannot survive without strife and conflict. The mind cannot forgive. Only you can.
Let's get some silence on that real quick to let that sink in. Only you can do it. Which means you are not the fucking mind. You are not your mind.
I'm all right.
All right. Forgiveness is to offer no resistance to life.
Oh my God. Where you said that?
You got to highlight it.
Where is it?
Right here. You gotta highlight
the next page.
She got to highlight it too. Where you say that? I didn't read that.
I did read that.
Allow life to live through you. The alternatives are pain and suffering, a greatly restricted flow of life energy, and in many cases, physical disease. So resistance pops up again. Don't resist. That's a word, forgiveness. You're right. Yes, that is definitely a word that enough people don't have a relationship with, because we're holding on to things from childhood, whether it's something our mom or dad did, or the reason we're not getting something we want because somebody's standing unaware. They did this to me in the past, so I'm not getting what I want now or in the future. And the truth is, we're just creating pain. We're creating that suffering ourselves. If we were to truly just not resist and forgive people, we would not have these problems for ourselves.
And I do want to acknowledge that I know why this is challenging. because at the end of the day, like, we have been taught, everything we've been taught goes against us. So if you're listening to us and you're like, okay, y'all sound like this is cute, but this doesn't sound like it's going to be easy. I know it's not. I know it's challenging because what we've been taught goes against everything that we're sharing with you right now.
Down over here?
Yeah, I'm going to try to come back in.
All right.
But I don't want to try to feel discouraged by that because we were in the same place where you were too.
Yeah.
And we've made lots of progress. So if we have been able to do that, you are also capable of doing that yourself. So we want you to continue to feel encouraged instead of discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead,
all right. So your link with the unmanifested, what is the relationship between presence and the inner body? And he goes on to say, presence is pure consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Consciousness that has been reclaimed from the mind, from the world of form. And so it's just being present, being here in the now, enjoying what we're doing now, not thinking about what I have to do tomorrow, thinking about what I have to do in an hour, thinking about what happened yesterday. And for us to reclaim our consciousness, is really we have to get control of the mind. And we're just such beings of the world and our surroundings and the form that we're in, that we're so caught up in, that once we do reclaim the mind, that's when we can get back to that consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because time is apparent, I gotta call at 6, y'all. I didn't realize I had to call at 6.
Yeah.
And actually, we were supposed to start these videos earlier anyway. That's probably why I was like, it's fine. But I think we can.
Yeah, we got a couple minutes.
We got a few minutes, and we can kind of go through some stuff quickly here. I want to share this with y'all. Feeling will get you closer to the truth of who you think, who you are, more than you think, more than thinking. I cannot tell you anything that deep within you don't already know. That's really important because we're sharing with you stuff that you already know. If you're watching this video and it's resonating with you, it's because deep inside you already know that. And if not, then you will be watching this and be like, this is not for me. But if you're still watching this, if this is resonating and connecting with you, it's because deep down within you, you already know this is true. And you know what's real can be threatened, Hey, boo.
Other benefits of becoming more conscious. It slows down the aging process, strengthens your immune system. The more consciousness you bring into the body, the stronger your immune system becomes. It is as if every cell awakens and rejoices. The body loves your attention. It is also a potent form of healing.
Yes.
Most illnesses creep in when you're not present in the body.
Yes.
And you've probably heard of these other people going these other ways of being healing. Well, this is one of them. It's self-healing. It's taking care of yourself. The things that go on in your mind affect your whole body. Whenever you're sad, your body feels it. You feel a certain way. Your body shows it. You're moping. So just in the same way, if you're feeding your mind nourishment, your mind is gonna build up, and that nourishment is going to give you the energy in your body.
Which makes sense because he does use a parable, I think, here about when the master is not at home, anything can go down. And I know I'm always talk about this roaches we got in here, but if we're not cleaning the house, if things are left to a mess, then the roaches are gonna do whatever they want. It's like if you live in New York and you've had rats before, you know what it is. If you don't clean your house,
pizza rat, what up?
The rats are gonna be there having a party. So you need to be vigilant about what's happening in your body, the same way you're vigilant about what's happening in the outside. Now, don't just make sure your house looks good, make sure that your inside is also good. Then he goes into creativity, but I think we can skip that. You want to mention? Oh, you didn't highlight. Oh, you did highlight the whole thing.
I thought I liked the whole thing. So
yeah, he always highlights the whole paragraph.
We could talk about it.
So he talks about how to use the creative mind, and he says, whenever an answer or solution or creative idea is needed, stop thinking for a moment by focusing attention on your inner energy field. Become aware of the stillness. We could say, don't just think with your head, think with your whole body. That's a new concept for me. And I'm excited to try that out as I am doing my creative work and report on how that goes for me. I have not been as mindful of this before. So I look forward to sharing with y'all what the thoughts are on that. And
then lastly, he talks about the art of listening.
Yay.
When listening to another person, don't just listen with your mind. Listen with your whole body. Feel the energy field of your inner body as you listen. That takes attention away from thinking and creates still space that enables you to truly listen without the mind interfering. You are giving the other person space to be. And we're all guilty of this. We're talking to somebody in our mind. It's elsewhere, or someone's trying to talk to us, and we're watching TV, or we're maybe having two conversations at once, and we're truly not being conscious in those cases, and we're really not being we're not being there for the other person. We're not allowing them to be, because we're so busy and caught up in our unconsciousness that we're not listening to them.
Absolutely. And he even says it, the being of the other person underneath the words of the mind. So you can only create room for other people if you are really fully present with them. If now you're going to be listening to reply instead of listening to understand and to create space for them.
And that's the mind. Once again, we're talking with our minds and not listening with our bodies. And lastly, he goes on to say, most human relationships consist mainly of mind interactions with each other, not human beings communicating, being in communion. No relationship can thrive in that way, and that is why there's so much conflict in relationships. Because no one's listening to each other. We're just listening to respond, or as opposed to listening to understand. That's something that we commonly say.
When the mind is running your life, conflict, strife, and problems are inevitable. Being in touch with your inner body creates a clear space of no mind within the relationship, within which the relationship can flower.
She can't read either.
I can't read either. So
no mind.
No
showed up
mind.
Once again. All right, guys. Chapter 6.
Chapter 6 in the book.
Chapter 6.
Next, we're gonna go into chapter 7. Portals into the unmanifested.
The unmanifested.
But before we go, we do want to share with you our next reading. The next book we're gonna be reading.
Which will probably at this rate start on a Friday.
Yeah, it's gonna start really soon. We're gonna go next with the 5 love languages, the secret to love that lasts. Since we are in a relationship and all, we figure we go into something a little.
I read this and I remember my love language. I believe physical touch and other one, but we'll get into all that. Once we get into it.
I also dropped the link for the quiz so that y'all can take it and then you can.
We're gonna start dropping these links for the books too.
Yeah, we gotta get better about that.
Well, this is our first. This is week number 6 or video number 6. So continue with us, guys. Know what you're doing. We've loved the feedback so far from our friends and family.
Please do.
And we gotta let Bay go because she has clients to talk to.
I have clients to discuss things with. But this is the next book we're going to be reading. So if you want to tag along, you can either get it on your library, or you can get it from Amazon, or you can get it from wherever the hell you want to. This is going to be our next reading. So we're going to start this on Friday, I believe, but more on that to come. We love you guys. Thank you for spending time with us. And until next time.
Later.
Bye.